Hello and welcome to the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. On this show we are talking about freedom and everything that means thanks to having a property portfolio and how you can let go of anxiety, worry and guilt along the way to ultimately ensure you can build a property business that runs without you. Now this is a very exciting week. This is the first ever episode that we are bringing guests onto the show, and I can think of no two people better to join us first and foremost than Hannah and George of Dugard Property. I've been there with these guys over the last couple of years as they have been implementing all of the things that we've been talking about on the programme through burnout, overcoming the shiny pennies of property and ultimately building a property business that really serves them. So this is an amazing conversation and I'm so grateful for these guys for being so open and honest. So we're talking about the red flags that show their face, that rear their heads when burnout is approaching, and how if you're having too many takeaways, maybe there's a different takeaway that you should be thinking about from it. It has been amazing to watch these guys grow and evolve over working with them over the last couple of years, and I'm delighted for them to come on board and share what they've been through to help you too. So let's do this. Hello, Hannah and George.
Hey, how you doing?
Really good. I'm so excited to have you guys on today. I think this is going to be a really amazing conversation. So we're going to talk about focus and how that really makes a massive difference in terms of like how many deals you can do, how much you can grow your property business. And I just think you guys are just such an amazing example of this, which is one of the reasons I wanted you guys to come on the podcast first and just like really be that beacon of light for those who are wanting to do what you guys have done and to really follow the approach that we're laying out here. So you guys are absolutely amazing. Like what you do, what you've done with Dugard Property, you've built a very successful sourcing company. You're also working with other investors, building your own portfolio. And I think you've really gone through amazing transition over the last couple of years with us like really focusing in on where your attention needs to go to actually do less in order to do more, to get more results by working less. And I think we've been working together for about 2 years now, so I think it's like quite an interesting journey. Anything, like, tell us about the business, anything that I've missed that you want people to know joining this conversation today?
Yeah, so I think you've pretty much got it in a nutshell. Yeah, Dugard Property sourcing company, and then we've got our holdings company where we essentially build up our portfolio. But we also do house flips and we do flat conversions as well. So in a nutshell, that is pretty much what we do now. And that's not to say that's what we did when we first met you. We did a lot more than that. When we first met you, we were doing rent to service accommodation, sourcing them, also doing them and building up our portfolio. We were doing developments from the ground up, mentoring,
conversion,
networking every pretty much day.
Chaos, just absolute chaos. It's like we would go to a networking event, and like Georgia said, we would go into every networking event going, and then we'd go to one and we'd listen to a talk and someone was saying like how amazing they were doing, and we were like, we need to do that. So we'd leave that and we'd be like, right, let's learn this, and then we'd go to the next networking event and someone was doing something different and we were like, we need to be doing that as well. And we just had the biggest shiny penny syndrome. But it was back when like everything was so fresh and so exciting that you feel like you can take on the world. So we were working stupid. Everything became, I remember
12 hours a day, more.
It would have been more than that. And I remember my first ever call with you, Jackie, because I remember being like, there was one status you had that I remember reading it to George, and it was S to a T, and it was literally like from the moment we woke up to the moment we went to sleep, all we did was work. We were then living off takeaways, like weekends didn't exist, like we were just all consumed by trying to take on everything.
I forgot to mention as well, the biggest use of our time was project managing, and we project managed every one of our own refurbs and project managed every one of our clients as well. And let's put it this way, we source about 10 to 15 deals.
It was chaos.
So it was absolute chaos. But yeah, we
and then I first call with you and you're like, get rid of this. How
did you feel about that when we had that conversation?
I remember coming off the call and I think we were like in full agreement on the call, and then I think we came off and George was like, do you think that's the right idea though? And you know what George is like, and we sat there and we were like, well, all we can do is try. And then we were like, but that's going to affect income. What about this? What about that? And you think of it, you instantly, well, at least our mindset back then, you'd instantly go back to all the things that could go wrong from changing it rather than looking at what could go right. So I think there was like some apprehension that we had, like you read everywhere, have multiple income streams, like protect yourself, diversify. And so you hear that everywhere. So you think that's what you should be doing. But we started, and I think the biggest thing, the moment we stopped the PM, that was a game changer.
An absolute game
And then
changer.
it kind of snowballed from there, where we just kind of stripped back everything else. And all of a sudden it was like, we can finish whatever time we want. And, you know, we started having our evenings back, our weekends back. We were going on holidays. Like, we were actually making more money. It was
improvements in the business, so it was less stressful for us as well. We had the time and the headspace to be able to make those improvements in the business. And because we could focus down on BRRs, which was our key strategy, our BRR portfolio just went through the roof, and did so well, and we were doing so well with it, and we were also sourcing just those for clients, and we just become like the professionals in that. And we were doing a lot more than what we were doing before in terms of like profitability,
and a lot easier as well, because if that was our sole focus, we weren't distracted elsewhere, so we could really tighten our belts on what we were doing for clients and the service. So then, like, the challenges started to become less. Obviously there's still challenges every day in every business, but everything just started to flow a lot better, didn't it? Which sounded so counterintuitive to everything we'd heard elsewhere. But yeah, it was amazing. And now we sit now, don't we? We see other people like coming onto the scene and like taking on the world or doing too much, and we start, they're like, oh, they're gonna go on the same journey. They'll realize.
You don't want to hear it, do you? Right, like when you first kind of starting, like, you're right, you kind of have all this energy and excitement, and you feel like you can just do it all, and kind of, I feel that that's kind of like the veneer of what you kind of see on social media too, right? Like, you don't really hear the reality of what starts to go on behind the scenes. And I feel there's quite a lot of shame actually involved with it, in terms of like, you feel like everyone else is somehow seeming to manage it, and then when you start to crumble underneath, it's it makes it feel like it's you. Do you think that's a fair way of summarizing it?
Oh, 100%. I know there was there's been a few instances actually where, you know, some people have started off around the same time of us as us and gone on to like achieve huge things. And I remember, like, me and George would be at lockerheads because we'd be going at like a nice pace, and George would be like, why aren't we doing as much as them? How have they got this? How have they done that? And, you know, ultimately they ended up going bust because they were doing too much, and there was, you know, there wasn't any control there. And I was like, see, that's why, you know, the famous old saying, slow and steady but controlled, and being in your lane. And I think that's when we really started to like put the blinkers on of not really looking at what anyone else was doing and just focusing on us, because of, as you said, you see what everyone's singing and you only see what people put on social media. And it's so easy to get locked into, well, I know what my day-to-day struggles are, and I can't see them having that because that's not what they're projecting. So we're doing something wrong. And I think that definitely, as you know, we went through a big burnout stage, and I definitely think that played into it when we acknowledged that we were burnt out and we had too much on at that point in time. I do think mentally we felt like we had failed compared to what we could see other people achieving. So that was like a hard pill to swallow, wasn't it? Whereas coming out the other side, you can now in hindsight see everything that led up to it, and we're very open about speaking about our journey and what we've been through. But then I think, I mean, in hindsight, I wish we met you sooner to have stripped all that stuff back. But I don't know if at the very beginning of your journey, when you're so excited and full of energy, whether you'd listen. So it's that balancing act, isn't it? But a
lot of people just don't listen, do they?
No.
I've spoken to so many people.
You've advised people.
I've advised so many people, and I just see them carrying on, and they just carry on going. And I mean, I had to get to the point where I would go into a networking event, and I remember just putting in my mind this barrier, just being there going, no, I need to focus. I'm there to network on what I'm doing, and not get distracted by someone else talking about social housing or serviced accommodation or something. I just had to have this like direct vision. And yes, that sounds very exciting and it sounds good, but maybe one day, not at the moment. I'm focusing on this for now.
So I think this is amazing, guys. I think it's just such we're a few more years ahead in terms of like having been through it, and I kind of feel like the further through you go, the harder you can like explain what you've been through to like warn other people. So maybe let's just go down this road of like, you guys have tried to do too much, you've found your focus, but you've still managed to get burnt out along the way. Can we talk
Mhm.
about like warning signs of burnout? Like if you like what kind of happened for you guys, and like what are maybe some red flags that would like alert you to it sooner next time?
I think personally for me,
It was the takeaways a lot.
yeah, the eating unhealthy, because if you
Working
just
weekends.
you didn't want to cook, you didn't have the energy to do anything, and you knew that, like, even on those days, if like we didn't work a Sunday as an example, like, we always had an excuse not to cook and to just do nothing. But then it was hard, like the guilt that came with, you knew you were exhausted, but you knew you still had 100 messages and you still had, 20 properties to go and visit, and it was like there was no enjoyment. You saw straight away you'd start to really clock out a bit. It became a bit Groundhog Day. You'd notice yourself really not, you were getting up and doing the same thing. There was no new ideas, there was no enjoyment, no excitement. For me, I really noticed that I started to really clock out of everything. Like, I could see messages flash up on my phone and I knew I should be responding to them, but I was very much like, I can't. And they could have been the easiest messages. Some of them might have even been off my friends, just like checking in or asking to do something. And I'd literally just stare at my phone and clear the notifications and it was like, in my mind, I knew I should be answering them. And then I think me and you, like, or from a relationship perspective as well, you're constantly on the, like,
You get
attack,
irritable.
but defense at the same time. Like, you're so, I think, yeah, irritable and wanting to bicker, and you can't see.
I just found myself coming out with like random bursts of like just frustration and just breakdowns and just cry out of nowhere because I just
there's a lot of
it'd all be
emotions.
too much.
And jealousy, I thought, was a big one. I started noticing I became very resentful of everyone. I was very jealous. I'd see something on social media, kind of going back to what we were saying just now, and it'd be someone like saying how amazing they were doing, and any other time I'd be like, I'm really happy for them, but I'd see that in that moment and be like, I can't stand them. Like, why is it working for them and not for us? Obviously they'd probably be doing their own stuff in the background, so you just end up going into this, you can feel yourself going into a dark space where you're just really pulling away from everything and just not enjoying.
You almost feel like, the best way I can say is you almost feel like you want to curl up. That is the best way I can say.
And I think you start having like drastic thoughts, not in like in a personal brain sense of like, I remember turning to George at one point, like in the thick of it, and I was like, why are we doing this? Let's just close. Who cares what the consequences? Let's just shut it down. What does it matter? And I think we got to that point, but like, that's such a drastic thought to where we are now and where we were at the beginning. That just shows how like dark a place we went into. I think everything just starts to become a bit irrational, doesn't it? Like the smallest, that's what I found. The biggest thing for me actually was the smallest. It wasn't even a challenge. It could be your normal day-to-day issue was a mountain. I'd literally turn a molehill into, what's the saying? Mountain into a molehill. That's it. Yeah. It could literally be a case of, someone can't find the keys to a house and the builder needs to go in, and that would spiral. That would literally, like, I could cry over that. It was ridiculous. And like, you had days like that, didn't you? Where you just locked yourself away. I think in terms of the run up to it, it was, you feel yourself pulling away to begin with, don't you? You feel yourself getting exhausted, but you keep pushing on instead of taking a break and reflecting.
That's thanks for your honesty, guys, because I think like I can relate to everything you've said there, having been through it. It's just like kind of, it brings it all back, and I'm sure people listening will be able to maybe spot some of those signs within themselves, because it doesn't happen all at once, does it? It kind of like happens gradually, but if you don't catch it early enough, like, you end up going to quite a dark place. So what would you say, if that, I think it can't just happen once too, right? Like, I think burnout can happen in different ways kind of along the journey. So what would maybe your advice be to yourself or to others if they start to see some of those warning signs?
I would say do a lot of what you enjoy, and start bringing that into your life. Definitely reduce your working hours. It's amazing the impact that exercise and healthy eating has, and people know that as well, but they don't do it. And they just have to make sure that they strictly
It's difficult though, right, when you're in it.
Oh yeah,
because
100%.
even
when you're in
now,
burnout, because you feel guilty for going to exercise and,
Yeah.
and making healthy food.
it's like even now you've had a stressful few weeks and going to the gym makes you feel better, but like for 2 weeks you didn't go but complained, but then you went and you was like, oh, instant relief, like you felt so much better.
Exactly.
It's hard to go, but once you're there it's like brilliant.
100%. You have to it is a battle with your own mind to be like, no, if I go to the gym I will be more productive, but you've got to make those lifestyle changes and you've got to be strict with it.
I find definitely having that, the healthiness, the exercise, just getting out and having fresh air. It doesn't even do a gym session, just like go for a walk. For me, I think my warning signs starts when I start to become really overwhelmed with things and I feel like there's too much going on, and they're all the same priority, and we're going to be really busy again. So I think that's when you need to be able to take a step back and actually go, what are the priorities, and so what if I don't do this? Because I think when you start to feel like that, or at least when I do, I know it's really hard for me to take a step back and deprioritize things, because I've worked myself up that everything's the same level. But when you can just sit down and go, right, if that doesn't get done, so what? If that's next week, so what? And if I have this difficult conversation with someone to say that's going to be delayed, so what? And I think being able to accept that not everything can be done,
perfect,
it's that acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, Jackie, we've spoken to you so much and we've really got into, the meditation and the taking a step back and going and having to sit down and
changing your state.
And changing your environment, changing your state. I think that's played a huge difference for us, because that's not anything we ever did before. So I think being able to maybe start to do things like that will be a massive help, because I think were more further on than me, but meditation and all of that stuff for me before, I didn't buy into it. Couldn't do it, didn't see it. And I remember when we had our first few sessions, I'd be in the room and everyone was like really zen and really into it, and I'd be like one eye open looking around the room like what's supposed to be happening. And I think there was one where I like fell asleep, so it's taken me a bit longer, but once you get into it, they're quite powerful.
Yeah, they are.
So what do you reckon the main benefit then of like thinking about your business, how has meditation helped your business, would you say?
I think it's just so a stressful situation is giving us like you almost in your mind you become a more positive person. Everything's just okay. Like the best way I can sort of say it, and Dave gave a really good example before, when you finish and you walk into the room and it's like you're dancing your arms up and down and you just become this like sort of like floaty fluffy sort of like, I know it sounds weird, but it makes you feel like really happy and positive. And any sort of stressful situation that therefore comes up in the business, you can just tackle it with a level-headed mind, rather than, when you're in burnout, frustration, everything's just, everything's just, and then you lose an hour because you've become frustrated and you've had to go on a walk and you've got annoyed. Whereas if you had meditated or changed your state with anything else, say for example exercise or something like that, you can tackle that situation a lot more level-headed and make good decisions, basically high level decisions.
I think it resets your mind, doesn't it? I always think that when you've been through something bad or there's a challenge on, everyone, like, that's a famous old saying, isn't it? Sleep on it, you'll feel better tomorrow. And I've been in this so many times. Something's happened, feel like the world's ending, I've gone to bed, I woke up the next morning and I'm like, actually, you know what, it isn't actually that bad, I just got caught up in the moment. And I think meditating gives you that in an accelerated way. You don't need to go and have a long sleep. 5-minute meditation just allows you to calm yourself down, reset your thinking, and you're like, right, actually, let's think about this logically and carry on.
For me, it also allows you to vision what you actually want and put yourself back on that track to ensure that you are going in that direction. So some meditations, you look at what you want and where you want to be, and then you think, well, I'm not doing that. Like sometimes you're like, I'm not actually on that journey. I'm not making sure I'm on that focus line. So that's helped me in that regard as well.
Amazing. This is amazing, sitting here and listening to you guys convince me of meditation. Oh, how the tides have turned. No, it's amazing. And thinking about like where we started this conversation around like focus, like I feel like there's some kind of connection with focus and then there being enough space for stuff like meditation. Talk to me what you think about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think if we look back to when we were trying to do absolutely everything, the thought of even trying to take 5 minutes to sit down and meditate, we would have just been like, that doesn't fit into the calendar. But I think the focus of just having one clear thing that you're focusing on, and it kind of going back to what I just said about when you're doing everything, it's really easy to then be pulled in so many different directions. If there's too much going on, ultimately there's no control, and like you find you've missed something, so something will land on your desk last minute that you've got to react to, or you're being pulled into something else. So we were constantly reacting to everything, whereas now when you've got that focus, everything's a lot more planned. I know with sourcing, that's still kind of a reactive model that we have, but our days, our weeks, they're more routine. So we can plan for when we want to have meditation or breaks or time off. But even the days, they're very structured, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, but in a sense that, like we speak all the time, and if something comes in that, you know, like, wow, right, okay, we need to digest this, we've got the time to. I mean, I think that does come back down to the fact that it's because we're not doing too much, so it's easier to manage what we're doing.
And we started to realize that doing it actually improves our productivity level as well.
Yeah.
So that was an important part to realize that.
And I think as well, when meditating, something that I used to struggle with before is how much, when you first sit down, how crazy your brain starts going. There's a million thoughts, and I think when you're trying to do a million things in general, there's so much that it takes you longer to settle. Whereas when we've obviously got the sourcing and the portfolio, yeah, there's still a million things going on, but it's all the same thing. So if, you know, you've got thoughts coming in, they're a lot easier to shush, I think.
Nice. It's really good. And that making me think then about, like, when you're like, when we first started working together, you were like, if a problem kind of came up in the business, or you're having a challenge to do with the business, I think your reaction was, we need to do something else new. Like, what we're doing isn't working. Like, maybe we should be doing blocks of flats instead, rather than. So, like, I feel that has changed for you and become a bit more. You got a bit more structure around the challenges that come up and the reaction that you have. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. So for example, if sourcing for whatever reason started to slow down, it was like, oh my God, everything's on fire. We can't be sourcing. Let's jump and do something else. We need to do it quickly. And then like the following month, oh, sourcing's doing well. Quickly jump back on there because we're good at it. Yeah. There was a lot of a lot of jumping. Whereas now it's like, well, you know, we forecasted to have a bit of a slower month next month because of X, Y, Z. While that's happening, actually, let's look at the processes that we wanted to tighten up, or this bit hasn't worked that well. What can we do to improve it? It's not we're trying to jump to loads of other things. We're just constantly improving what we've got, and we've seen that massively play out the last few months.
Or we look at things that are very closely associated with it. We don't like going too far out of the. There's like a boundary around it that we don't want to go too far out of that strategy. We want to make sure that anything we do or bolt onto the business is very closely related. So we're not doing a whole new thing and getting distracted.
But even then, before, we would have just said, oh, that sounds good, or we should be doing that, and we would just jump on it and dive right in. Now it's like, that sounds good, that's closely linked to the business, but how much time would that take? How stressful would that be for us? And have we got the resources to do it? So now it's like we actually think things through, and then we're like, actually no, that one works, so just we can bin that, but actually this bit, that would be quite cool. Let's have a conversation with Jackie.
And then she comes in, she kicks your ass for something else. Why haven't you meditated?
It's funny because we go on the call sometimes and I'm like, oh, we're in this new environment, Jackie, and I'm thinking we may need to do a new strategy, and you just go straight away, you're like, no, not the new strategy. Let's look at the current strategy and how we can adapt.
Like, damn it, I thought we were finally there. The next one. No, it's a fine balance, isn't it? And I think it's like, it's a bit, there is obviously a bit of a, we've done as much as we can to put like a process and a science around focus, but it is an art as well. And like the economy is always changing, and it is like, you're right, like what's the boundaries of just like optimizing and improving what you're currently doing, and when does it become something new? And I think, there's not always a clear-cut answer, but at least what you sound like, you've now got more criteria to make decisions. So the things that you said were like, how much time will it take, how stressful will it be, how much of our resources will it take, so how much, I guess, will it cost us? Anything else that you...
A big one is, will it move us away from our goal and what we want in life, which is holiday every 6 weeks, pretty much, same as what you guys love to do. Will it distract us from spending time with Arthur now, our son, and what we want in life? Like, if it is going to start pushing us down that avenue, we're not interested anymore. I know we were at one point, we were doing absolutely everything, and now we're like, we've got a criteria now. If we want to do something, we've got a criteria, and it can't deviate away from that.
Yes. Have we got the resources? Would it require like training? Because of we are now in specifically Dugard property, to where we were at the beginning. Obviously, right at the start, George and I were doing everything, and even when we onboarded staff members, we still were doing everything. Whereas now the team that we've got, I mean, I'm not in Dugard property. I'd probably say 5% of the time, like, I'm really not needed. I obviously oversee stuff. George is more involved because he loves the analysis side, and there's still things that we need to tweak, but we can go on holiday now. And when we do think of new things, it's always like, well, is that going to need us? Because if that requires us to do it, we're not that much. We're not.
Do we enjoy it, first of all? Do we have the time, sort of thing? Yeah.
And you're right, the more like new stuff you do, the more you have to get involved in it as the business owner to figure out how it's going to work and make it all happen. And I think at first, when you haven't done it before, you underestimate how much, not just time, but headspace that's going to take for you to start the new thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's also an experience thing, right? Like, you guys have tried a lot of different, well, we call them business models, but normally people call them strategies. You guys have tried a lot of stuff, right? What I like to say to people is, look, there is no perfect strategy. They're all just as great and just as crap as each other. Do you agree with that statement? Talk to me about that.
I do, because I think everyone's different. Everyone has different goals. Everyone invests in different areas of the UK or even abroad. So I think different strategies align for different people's locations, finances, goals, their risk appetite, and I guess their like enjoyment levels. I think one thing we really learned early on is the reason that we like buy-to-lets is because the consistency. So that works for us. But then you might have people who absolutely love, and thrive off of how much you can get from a service accommodation, like if it's especially through like the summer seasons, they thrive. Whereas for me, I hate them waiting for is that actually going to do well this month and next month, and we're coming into winter now, is that going to, I can't do, I much prefer the consistency. But I do think, but I do think there's a strategy for everyone, but it's that person needs to find it, because I think it's really easy to, like we keep saying, go to an event or see stuff on social media and someone say how amazing a strategy is, but it doesn't necessarily work for everyone.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said about what people's goals are and what their vision are, and they need to align that.
Yeah, really nice. Then I want to touch back to Hannah, what you were saying before, that you spend about 5% of your time working in Dugard property. I want to know what you're spending your time on, because I know you've got things on your list around like optimizing the team and the structure. Like, talk to us a bit about what your plans are in that area.
Yeah, I think I primarily, a lot of my time is spent on our portfolio, but in terms of like Dugard property, now we've really got into a really good rhythm and with the team, and we're consistently getting a really good amount of deals each month. I want to start to like perfect all the things that we've spoken about before, whether that be like improving our systems or the processes, putting some checklists in place, like really reinstalling governance. Because we had a change in team and the governance side started to, it fell to the side, but now everything's gelled really well. It's getting that heartbeat within the team of, and George and I have always been contactable kind of 24/7, and that's what I think one of the, not challenges, but something that we've had whenever we go on holiday. We can't fully switch off because of everyone's so used to just being able to contact us at any moment in time for any issue. just always in reach. So it's now trying to go to that next level now, whereas, well, we've got this one, weekly team meeting where we'll pick up on issues there. And that means when we're away, if we can either join in that one meeting, or we can just say we can leave it for that week. So it's trying to get everything a lot more structured now, isn't it? And that stuff really excites me, and play into the team's strengths. So we're refining, aren't we, like roles?
And I suppose, the big thing, like you said, is the checklist. So when we're away, they've got a checklist that they go through. So, for example, when they're doing a deal pack for an investor, have you looked at this? Have you looked at the comparables? Have you looked at the sold subject to contract comparables? Have you looked at the rental comparables? And you're just following this checklist to make sure everything's been done properly. And then it pretty much flows, doesn't it? So they're the sort of checklists we want to get in place. So then when we go on holiday, everything can wait for us for the week, or the 2 weeks maybe. And
would that checklist have been possible if we've got the world before focus and the world after focus? Would those checklists have been possible to make in the world before focus?
No, and I think if they had been made, they wouldn't have been used.
Everything was just too
and
it couldn't be governed either.
No, not at all. So it would have been in that we found we were trying to do a lot of things back then, which actually was wasted time, because I could have sat down and created a checklist, and I could have spent time doing it and headspace, but they would never have been used. Whereas now, like even back then, we'd have meetings that just constantly got cancelled. Things just they didn't flow the way they should have. Whereas now we can govern it a lot more. We've got a team who wants to govern it.
And everything's just very,
It
very
runs
nice.
like a business.
It just runs like a business now. It's structured, and we actually can do what we set out to do when we wanted to go into property. We wanted to go into property to have a lifestyle. We definitely didn't before.
No.
So we can run it like a business. So a business is supposed to run without the owners. So that's essentially what we're.
It's funny though, because if I remember when we were in like the thick of it, before we burnt out, you'd almost like feel like you were bragging that, well, I work so many hours and so many days because I'm doing so much, and like look how much we can do. Whereas now, like, no, the bragging is we don't work. The bragging is I can go on holiday. And it's funny, if we had started, and then that's the thing, right? When we first started, if we were having days and weeks like we do now, where we're not working all day every day, we're not working weekends, I think at the beginning I would have felt like I was failing. Like, surely it can't be like this. I'm not doing enough. And again, that comes from being in like the networking and social media again, right? But now that's where we want to be, and I couldn't imagine running. But we may as well have stayed to the way that we were at the very beginning. I was honestly better off in my job.
Interesting. What, just because you were having to work so many hours and you're actually being paid worse, probably at that point.
I know. It's like, why are we doing this? And the stress, and obviously when you work, I couldn't ever imagine doing it on my own. I would have quit a very long time ago, but it puts a strain on your relationship. So we were obviously doing it together, and you go through the highs and lows together, but that really like stressful time when you're trying to do everything, and especially at the very, very beginning when there was absolutely no roles split, was there? It was like both try and do the same thing.
There's no structure.
It was just
no time to do the structure of government.
And then it puts a strain on your relationship, because if you're working all day every day, and then that's all you're speaking about as well, like where does your normal relationship come back into it? Because if then it was, well, you're paying less and we've got no time to go out and do this, and let's have a takeaway, or so let's both feel like slobs on the sofa, and it just kept snowballing, didn't it?
So what are your sort of relationship rules now? Like, how do you make sure that you can be husband and wife and not just, co-founders?
I was speaking to someone yesterday at a corporate day about this, and I find that the main things are is we definitely have separate roles. We don't work weekends at all, and we make sure we have like date nights in the diary. I would say we probably one day a week we don't work as well now. But it's quite spontaneous. It's quite nice actually. It's more like
it's a really quiet day today.
It's let's log off. Let's just have a day off, which is really, really nice. And I'd probably say until we had Arthur, which we can't so much at the moment, but We are soon actually going in September, but for a holiday. But I'd say we've done the every 8 weeks holiday sort of thing, didn't we?
I still think there's I think there always will be the balance, isn't there? Like we're each other's, not punch bag, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. It's really easy to like let everything out to your partner, is it? And almost use them to release how you're feeling, because there's still challenging days, there's still stressful days. But it's like you said on one of our recent calls, Jackie, is if you see the other person getting triggered or there's something working them up, just tell them to go and meditate. Don't sit there and absorb everything that they're struggling with, but just
don't tell them to change their state.
Yeah, because we both do that a lot. Like if one of us is getting really worked up over something, and it could be again minute, they'll be like, go and have a walk, like leave and then come back
about this right now.
So I think it's being able, at the very beginning, I remember, I think I maybe even had a conversation with you, Jackie, where I was like, George's happiness is my happiness. So the moment I saw that he was struggling with something or something was challenging, I would then take it on board as well, even though I could have been having a really happy day and fine. So now it's being able to like to separate that and be like, right, you go away, you go calm down, and then come back and we can talk it through. So it's being each other's like rock, isn't it? But without needing
to be their therapist.
It's so nice to like work with you guys and pass on all this stuff that, you know, everything that you're saying. I'm like, Dave and I have basically had exactly the mirror image version of it just a few years before you guys. So it's it's great to have this conversation, because I think you're not the only people that are in this situation. So I think just like sharing that openly, that we're all having those challenges, and that, you know, that's okay and that there's a way through it. I think you guys, you know, hopefully giving people listening like there's a lot of hope, and there's a lot that can be done to make stuff a lot better. But maybe the answer isn't what we necessarily jump to in the first instance, which is, it must be that running a sourcing company isn't what I'm meant to be doing. Maybe it's that I'm meant to be building a HMO portfolio.
And I think sometimes it's just nice to hear that someone's been through it, because I remember we had a call we've obviously had loads with you about it, but I remember that one specific call we had with Dave, and it was when Dave was like, guys, like you're burnt out. We were sat in the car outside Howden.
I remember that exactly.
I think we were both pretty much in tears, and I think
it wasn't that he said we were burnt out. He put the symptoms of burnout. He came onto the call and said all the symptoms of burnout, and we got off the call, and I remember switched off the call and looked at each other and we're like, we're so burnt out.
We were literally, I can't even remember if that was specifically what the call day was coming on for, but I think
probably not. I think they had a call plan last week to do deal analysis, and ended up talking about how to like pull apart your emotions and your thoughts.
I think he came on
what you need.
I think he came on to analyze a deal, and we were both just sat there in tears. I think he was like, right, let's change this call. But I think just hearing someone else, I think every time we come off our calls with you guys, or from like the quarterly days, the biggest thing George and I always take away is, because whenever you're in that moment, whether it's burnout, whether it's just, you know, stress or a challenging day, sometimes just hearing someone say, been there, understand how you're feeling, is like a huge difference. And that really, you guys help us a lot with that. Massively.
It's really good. And it's also then nice that, you know, and it sounds like you guys are doing it too, like you go out and about and you pass that information on, and like that for us, it's like, it's been such a joy to watch you guys not suffer, but like come through the struggles, and to be able to, like, you have got through the stuff so much quicker than Dave and I have. So it's really nice to have just been able to like pass that on, and just to see it make such a difference. And I just love, you guys are just so good at just taking ideas and implementing, maybe like a little slow with the meditation, but like generally like take an idea and you'll run with it. And like, that's what I one of the things I love about you guys, like you're so capable, and you're so good at going and pushing stuff forwards, and just the fact that we've now like knocked that into shape where it's just like really focused, just means that you are getting so much more out of every hour that you put into your business, creating a lot more time for yourself, and therefore you've got more space for your to make your relationship even better as well.
100%.
It's really good. So tell me about the future. What's in the future for you guys personally and for the business?
A lot more holidays.
I think for us at the moment, it is definitely holiday every 6 weeks, sort of
Yeah.
spending a lot more time with Arthur. For Dugard Property, we really like the position it's in. We may grow slowly, but at the moment, like we are happy with where it's at, and we're happy with making improvements to maybe use the current team we've got to get more profitability out of it. We're all about like the most amount of impact for the least amount of effort in certain areas now. So for example, we want to look at like buying portfolios, don't we?
Yeah.
So buying portfolios where before we were buying BRR single lets all around everywhere. So we'd buy one in Merthyr, one over Newport, one there, one, and it was all separate bits of paperwork and also separate bits of traveling to the properties, and it became chaos. I know it's good when you first start in a couple of in different areas, but when you want to scale up and you want to do it in an effective and efficient way, I believe portfolios is a great area to go down. So I feel we're gonna start focusing on that now, where we can nail down just on it comes to focus again, doesn't it? It comes down to focus again, focusing on that one area. They're all in one area. And the benefits of it as well. I mean, you get so many benefits like multiple dwellings relief and many other benefits, and economies of scale on things like legal costs and everything. So it's somewhere that I think we want to focus on, isn't it?
Yeah, I think listening to you speak then, like obviously we've got the two businesses, and we've in the past tried to make both of them do so much at the same time. Whereas I think now it's a case of, Dugard Holdings, it's quite quiet at the moment, actually. There's like, we're at the tail end of a lot of like refurbs, refinances, sales. And Dugard Properties in a really good position and consistently performing with the team. So now it's a case of, well, we want to make some improvements in Dugard Property, like you just said, to make it more profitable, but just to put our governance in, shape it a bit better. But that's going to be small tweaks that the team will then run with. So then we can focus then on building our pipeline in Dugard Holdings to increase our cash flow there. And I think we'll keep probably flipping between the two. We'll get Dugard Holdings into a position where we've increased the cash flow to X that we want. And then it's a case of, right, back to Dugard Property, anything we need to do there, rather than constantly trying to make them both the biggest things ever.
And just causing chaos in our life. Yeah. We don't want to cause chaos. So we if we fancy a challenge in one of the companies, we'll come into there, and fancy a challenge in the other one, we'll have a look at that company. Yeah.
Who are you guys? This is
I know.
It's amazing.
I know.
I have one final question that I really wanted to ask is, like, what do you think is the benefit for your investors? You guys source properties for people who just want a hands-free service and to own their own properties, and then you also work with investors who want to come in and build a portfolio with you guys. So tell me, why has it been a good thing for your investors on both sides that you've found this focus?
So many benefits. I mean, from the Dugard Property side, I think we've been able to, tighten the service, make it a bit more personal. The team.
They're brilliant, aren't they?
Yeah.
Everything's effective and efficient through the process.
And because we've been able to focus on building the team and training them in a way, and now they run it better than what we did. Like we were the point of contact at one point for everyone, but we were doing everything. So, we couldn't reply to everything constantly. We weren't, with some of the stuff we were doing late at night, it wasn't, just Dugard Property in general just has a much better service where we've been removed, and they're focusing on just the sourcing of the one strategy. I think for our investors from the investment side who are on the journey with us, we're able to run our projects tighter. We're from the focus, we're picking up better deals, we're building the pipeline.
It's funny, wasn't it? The JV partner the other day he was
a source client.
He used to buy source deals, and he came on with us as a JV partner, and he just messaged us the other day saying it just feels so amazing not having to stress or worry about anything or do anything. I was like, it's because we're doing everything.
Yeah, but we have the
time and the energy to make it efficient and effective. Yeah. So he's happy, and he's just like, this is amazing. Like, I like it.
Just like updating investors, isn't it? Thinking of how we can do things better, thinking of the next step. We have that. That space
to make everything just stress-free and
really nice. Cool. This has been amazing, guys. So I think I'd love maybe one final thought from each of you, like thinking about focus, like your final summary about like what's been the impact of being focused for you, and what your advice would be to someone coming off the back of this today.
I think it's just made us, I think as soon as we started focusing, that was when everything really accelerated. And I think it's just about being, not being a jack of all trades and a master of none. I think we really have seen a difference difference in our lifestyle, business performance as soon as we started focusing. My main advice would without a doubt be just don't try and take on everything. Like don't go and open a sourcing company and do your project management as well as the sourcing, as well as trying to build a team, as well as trying to do all social media, as well as then trying to build your own portfolio, as well as then get excited because you've seen a development and your BRR isn't big enough, you need another development. Just don't go and do that, because you'll end up burning out, you'll end up being in it for what you didn't come in it for, and everything will just everything will be a bit of a nightmare. So I think definitely try and stay focused, try and avoid the sea of shiny pennies, as you like to call it. So yeah, that's definitely my advice.
Yeah, mine is trust the process and don't fight it, because I know we were resistant to begin with. 100%. So I think, yeah, don't fight it, enjoy it, and definitely trust that it works out so much better in the end.
Yeah, because just quickly, when we first wanted to scrap project management, we were like, but hang on, that's our like all-in-one service, and our clients probably won't come to us anymore. But all we needed to do was have a conversation with all these clients who were concerned and say, look, we're going to employ people or refer you to people who can do it better. We're going to refer you to these people who can do it better than us, and they've got the time to do it. And then everything, it worked. So we trusted that process, and it worked.
Massive thank you to Hannah and George there for being so open about their challenges and the learnings that they've had along the way. If you want to connect with those guys off the back of listening to that today, their contact details, social media links and website are all in the show notes that you can find accompanying this episode. So yeah, please do reach out to those guys. It's amazing what they're doing and how that power of focus is supporting them to serve their investors better, even though they're working less. So definitely reach out and connect with those guys. So meanwhile on the show, this time next week, we're going to be back to Dom and Dave, and they are talking about overcoming limiting beliefs. And these guys came off this episode absolutely buzzing about what they'd shared. Slightly extended length of episode, because actually for us it's a real theme that we see in all of our clients at the moment, about how clear that self-sabotage starts to be, and how if you can change that narrative behind the scenes, really you can change everything. So same time next week, we'll see you, well, Dom and Dave will see you to talk about overcoming limiting beliefs.